Welcome to the Manic Metallic podcast, where we respect fashion's past, analyze fashion's present, and get excited about fashion's future. I'm Liberty Gaither, founder and creative principal of fashion media company Manic Metallic. Several times per week, I'll bring you episodes about exciting things happening in fashion, discussion about current issues facing the industry, and the places and people that have made the fashion industry great. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on Instagram at the Manic Metallic Podcast and at Manic Metallic, both linked in our show notes. Now, let's get into today's episode. Welcome to the Manic Metallic Podcast. I'm Liberty, your host. Before we start this episode today, I'd like for us to take a moment of silence for fashion journalist and television host Elsa Clench, who passed away at age 92 a few days ago. This episode is going to be another 3 things exciting Manic Metallic in fashion episode, which we haven't done one of those in a few weeks. So, we're excited to get into it. The first thing exciting us is the fact that with all of the upheaval happening in Ukraine as Russia's declared war on them over the past few weeks or so, fashion brands and conglomerates are finally pulling out of Russia temporarily and ceasing operations in the country. What took them so long is what I wonder. In fact, that's only a metaphorical question because we don't really have to ask what took them so long. I think that we all have a decent idea of at least what might be at fault here. So some of the brands that have ceased operations temporarily in Russia are as follows: Hermes, Richemont, LVMH, Kering, Chanel, Prada, and those are the luxury brands. We've even got fast fashion brands hopping on board. Zara, H&M, ASOS, Boohoo, they've all stopped operations in Russia as well. In addition to that, you've got online luxury retailers that have stopped delivering to Russia right now, 2 of those being Farfetch and Net-a-Porter. And the reason that this is an important thing that happened is because wealthy Russians, seeing all of the sanctions that were coming down the line against their country and against those with massive amounts of wealth in particular, wealthy Russians were actually purchasing luxury goods like watches and jewelry in order to store their wealth in those goods so that they could maintain some value to their money. So thinking about it that way, the fact that fashion brands took a bit longer to impose these sanctions have given these wealthy types in the country more time to purchase luxury goods and shield their wealth, which that's really unfortunate. But again, I'm just thankful that they finally did the right thing. It's like it took public pressure for them to do that though, which unfortunately seems to be a common thing in fashion. The industry will, not all the time, but often enough, if you stay on them long enough, they'll bow, at least in part, to public pressure. Whether or not it ends up just being a performative act, who knows? Like, what effect is this actually going to have on these brands and conglomerates like LVMH, like Kering, like Chanel? What effect is it actually going to have on them and their bottom line? Is this going to end up being performative? But whatever the case, it's something that needed to happen, and it's great that they did it. The second thing that we're excited about in fashion this week is the fact that the various fashion weeks actually continue. Because consider this. Around the time that Russia invaded Ukraine, we were pretty deep into the so-called fashion month with the foremost well-known fashion capitals, New York, London, Milan, Paris. And there were multiple calls for fashion to stop having fashion week. So many people were wondering, why are fashion brands and fashion week organizations, why are they continuing to put on these shows? Fashion isn't important right now. We should all be focusing our energy and attention on these world events. And while to an extent that's true, the fact that with so much going on, we should be focusing on how we can help the people of Ukraine and people that are studying in the country or that are there for any other reason and want to evacuate. How can we help refugees? Essentially, we should be thinking about that. But at the same time, Can you think of any other industry, any at all whatsoever, that people have been calling on to cease operations? I can't think of any. To me, the fact that fashion was the first one that people looked at and thought, oh, you know what? They're just showing clothes. They're just putting on these shows and having parties, doing all of these things. What they're doing doesn't matter. Let's just have them stop doing what they're doing. Did you hear anyone tell engineers to stop engineering? Did you hear anyone tell doctors to stop seeing patients? Did you hear anyone tell marketers to not market? Did you hear anyone tell supermarket workers to not work at the supermarket? I mean, I could go on here with professions, but the answer is no. Fashion, I feel, consistently bears the brunt of scorn whenever there are serious events happening in the world. We look around to see, what isn't important here? What isn't important here while these events are going on? Fashion isn't important. And why is that? Again, it's a sign of how little regard that many people have for the industry. And I really need to get to that in an episode coming up. I'll get back to you guys on when that's going to be, but I am going to focus on the fact that fashion doesn't hold a high level of seriousness for so many people. Yeah, I just feel like that needs to be talked about. I want to take a quick moment to tell you about Manic Metallic's recent product. Do you like fashion? Does it matter to you beyond just entertainment value? Well, Manic Metallic is a fashion media company that creates audio, written, and video content that supports our ethos that fashion is an art, discipline, and societal force for change. We recently published a fashion ebook titled Alternative Fashion Capitals, a survey of 20 cities of emerging thought leadership. In it, we detail 20 cities beyond just New York, Milan, London, and Paris that have thriving fashion scenes, and we dive deep into what they have to offer, including shopping districts, specific places to shop, brands, events, fashion organizations, fashion publications, and universities and colleges. These 20 cities have a lot to offer the world with regards to the fashion industry, and Manic Metallic is determined to share their stories. We'd love for you to consider purchasing this fashion ebook and for you to join our growing community via our website, social media, newsletter, and podcast. For more information on the ebook and where it can be purchased, please visit manicmetallic.com/products. We look forward to hearing from you. Now, back to the podcast. The third and final thing that we are excited about this week is the level of creativity on display at Milan and Paris Fashion Week. Now, granted, over the past few weeks, there wasn't really a lot of focus on the individual fashion shows, just being honest here. At the same time, we did look in on a few, and a few that come to mind for me that just had really good showings, a lot of creativity, stellar output was Loewe. Loewe had a great showing. But is it any surprise that Jonathan Anderson put on a stellar outing? No, it's not. The next two to come to mind are Rick Owens and Schiaparelli, which, oh my gosh, I really want to talk to you guys about what I think about those three shows in particular, and maybe a few more that I took a look at and the rest of Manic Metallic took a look at, because there was really excellent work on display, on the runways. And again, thank goodness that we didn't cancel. But no promises. I may do it. I may not. There might be other topics that come up in fashion that end up taking precedence. And also, me personally, just so you guys know, I'm actually planning a wedding. I'm getting married on May 14th of this year, so I'm only a little over 2 months out from my wedding. So the fact that I'm hosting the podcast and preparing for a wedding and keeping up with everything going on in fashion, and it's a lot to take on, but it's all just very, very exciting, and I'm happy to be doing all of it. So yeah, I mean, I really like to get around to talking about these three shows that I mentioned and maybe a few more, but Can't promise that I will. And that's going to be it. Tune into the next episode. It's going to be a Who Is showing. But until then, see you soon. Thanks for listening. If you got value out of today's episode, it'd mean a lot to me if you'd rate, review, and subscribe to the Manic Metallic podcast. Be sure to tell all of your fashion-inclined friends and coworkers about the podcast as well. This would really help us to spread our message about fashion being an art, discipline, and force for societal change. And don't forget to stay in touch with us by subscribing to the Manic Metallic newsletter and following us on Instagram. Feel free to reach out to us through either of those means. I'd love to hear from you. I'll link these all in the show notes. You're the best. See you next episode.